As a dungeon master, one of the best parts of running the game is handing out magic items, selecting or crafting weapons and trinkets to suit your players, and giving them fun new options to take on the world is incredibly rewarding. That's not this video though. Sometimes you want to troll your players. Part of the fun of DMing is getting to throw them a curveball every now and again. And what better way to do it than with loot that maybe isn't as straightforward as they're used to. I want to give you 14 ideas for magic items that are a bit out of the ordinary and guaranteed to get a groan from your party. Some of these I've used in my own games, but most are absolutely untested, so I'd love to hear your own thoughts on each. If your players are clever or willing to mix things up, they might even find some pretty cool uses for them. Without further ado, let's get started. Every paladin dreams of getting their hands on a Holy Avenger. +3 to attack and damage, advantage on saving throws for your allies, extra radiant damage to crush fiends. So when they hear the enemy they just defeated has dropped a Holy Revenger, it'll probably pique their interest. Could this be just as powerful? Well, maybe for the dude they just killed to get it. That's because the Holy Revenger gives you advantage on all attacks against any enemy who previously killed you in combat. And 2d10 extra necrotic damage too. So sure, there's the small matter of dying. What are clerics for anyway? And imagine the party's horror when the villager they murder hoboed in session 2 comes back as a revenant with one of these. They might not think it's so silly then. Being able to change your appearance at a moment's notice could be critical in D&D. Sneaking into cult bases, escaping scenes of dastardly crimes, trying to get one more drink when the bartender cuts you off. A lot of D&D abilities and items let you turn into a whole host of alter egos. But what if you could only turn into one very specific person? Enter the Hat of Previous Disguise. While attuned, you can use an action to change your appearance, but only to whoever was attuned to the hat last. That could be the shopkeep you bought it from, or the party member who last had it on. Still useful, but now if your disguise gets compromised, you'll need to find a way to get your illusion changed by pawning it off on someone else for a bit. Granting you strength scores over 20, even the weakest belt of giant strengths, the hill giant to be exact, will be coveted by your party's fighters and barbarians. And look, the belt of hill giant Taint does the same thing, boosting their strengths to a whopping 21. Unfortunately, that's not the only characteristic they'll take on. The belt causes you to smell like a hill giant too, and that overpowering odor will give your player disadvantage on persuasion checks. Is the extra strength worth ruining their social life? How much charisma does your average barbarian have anyway? I'll leave those questions for your players to ponder. Becoming invisible is a powerful ability in D&D. So much so that the Ring of Invisibility, which lets you blink out whenever you want, is a legendary item. So a bell that lets you go invisible might appear broken to your players at first, until they ring it, that is. When a player uses an action to ring the bell, they do turn invisible, but the bell will keep ringing and ringing. Though they'll still be unseen, they'll be making lots of noise wherever they go, rendering stealth impossible. If they stop the bell from ringing, then they become visible again, so that's not an option. A clever party could pair the bell with a silence spell to get some good use out of it. Otherwise, your party rogue might have some trouble doing the thieving and sneaking that they're usually up to. And what a shame that would be. The ability to hop between worlds can be literally campaign changing, as your party traverses between the various planes that make up the universe. When your party hears they found an Amulet of the Planes, their minds might race to all of the crazy shenanigans and adventures they'll be getting up to. That is, until they realize the spelling is wrong. This is Planes, spelled Plains, and it will teleport them, but instead of traveling to Hell or Mechanus, they'll end up in a flat field somewhere in your world. A plane, if you will. Is this one kind of cheap? Yes, but the real funny part is when they realize it won't take them home. Better start walking. Frontline fighters are always looking for armor upgrades, anything to help them survive as they charge into the fray. And hey, if their new plate armor or chainmail does something cool, even better. So your players may be happy to find a beautiful, shining breastplate and see the runes that line the interior. Unfortunately, it might not be as squeaky clean as it first appears. You see, this is the armor of slipping and sliding, and as a bonus action, the attuned player can cause thick, greasy green slime to pour out of the armor. It does give them advantage on saves and checks against being grappled or restrained for 1 minute, just at the cost of their dignity. And this isn't magical grease. They'll need to clean it off after it dries or walk around in stained armor. Useful, but repulsive. Every party loves a good pair of sending stones. They're probably metagaming anyway, so why not just make it official and give them some rocks that let them talk from across scenes. But you know what these items are missing? They're not delicious. Introducing the Sending Scones, delicious baked goods that double as a messaging device. To use them, the first player eats one of the scones and can then cast Sending to whoever has the other treat. That player can respond, but only if they eat their scone too. They may only be usable once, but as far as consumables go, I bet they taste a lot better than a healing potion. Speaking of healing potions, if your party is anything like mine, the first thing they do whenever they get to a new town is look for the nearest apothecary. Healing potions are a staple of pretty much every campaign, and the instant hit points they grant are always a welcome relief for your players. But while most parties will wait until the last minute to start chugging their potions, what if they had to be a little more strategic about when to pop their brew? Not to be confused with the greater healing potion, the later healing potion still grants whoever drinks it 44 plus 4 hit points, only they get it on their next turn, not when they drink it. Do you try to beat the bashing and drink the potion early so it kicks in before you go down? Or maybe you risk dropping, knowing you'll be brought back on your next turn. Who knows what they'll choose to do, but I can guarantee they'll be annoyed once they realize their healing potion comes with a built-in timer. And that's what we're looking for. Sometimes an axe is just that, an axe. The axe of chopping gives them advantage on attacks against any plant-type enemies. You know, like an axe. History is a skill that I think often gets overlooked in D&D. When exploring the world or unraveling its secrets, it helps to have a player in the party whose character can actually understand the DM's clues and lore bits that are left around. But with intelligence being a pretty common dump stat, sometimes you have to help your players out a bit. And that's where tongue-tied comes in. Once a day, your players can point the sword at an object or structure, and the sword will impart information about its history and origins. Pretty useful. Here's the catch. It does so in a random language, whether or not the attuned can understand it. One day it may be speaking Common, and the next Infernal, then Primordial or Aquan. Beyond being funny, this could lead to some great role-playing moments, as the Tabaxi rogue tries to relay what the sword told her in broken Elvish to the party druid. Or could even lead to a side quest where they need to get the information translated. So still kinda cool, but also a little mean. Boomerangs are mainly known for one thing. They always come back. That's kinda their whole shtick. So when your players find the confused boomerang, they might assume that when they throw it, it'll return back to them after they attack. And if they hit, it will. And not only will it come back, but it'll deal 4d6 extra force damage on impact. Pretty good. Unfortunately, the boomerang is confused for a reason, and if it misses, it's never coming back. That boomerang will zoom off into the distance, never to be seen again. Burn bright, burn fast, little boomerang. Flying is one of the best abilities in D&D, bar none. Soaring over obstacles, getting an aerial advantage on your enemies, looking cool, flying can do it all. Whenever you give out an item that grants your party the ability to take to the skies, you need to be very careful that it won't be abused and make every challenge trivial. The Flute of Flight does just that. Whoever uses their action to play the flute can grant one of their allies a fly speed of 60 feet, but only as long as they play the flute. If they're in combat, then on subsequent turns, they'll need to use their action to keep playing the instrument. Otherwise, their ally plummets to the ground. If they're out of combat, then they'll need to make constitution saves in order to keep playing and playing and playing as their friend zooms around the city looking for the nearest apothecary. And of course, they'll need to be concentrating on playing the flute. So if any orcs decide to introduce them to their axe, they'll have to save to maintain their playing. Honestly, might still be worth it to freak out commoners with your magic flute. If you really want to see your players sweat, ironically, you should throw them in water. Underwater combat is a nightmare for most characters. Weapons are less effective, their speed will be cut in half, and the wizard who relies solely on fireball will be having a bad time. When your party becomes pirates and start to have high seas adventures, and they will become pirates, they'll be grateful for any weapon that helps them out when combat takes them below the waterline. Fishfork might do that job a little too well. It's a +1 trident, which means they won't be getting disadvantage underwater, and gives them a swim speed of 30 feet. Pretty good, except this trident is cursed. While attuned, your player won't be able to get rid of the weapon, and worse, they'll no longer be able to breathe air at all. Only water. So while slaying merfolk and Kuatoa won't be much of a problem anymore, getting back on the boat might be a bit of a challenge. Lastly, we have every rogue's dream, a +2 dagger that deals an extra d8 psychic damage with every hit. Pair that up with a well-timed sneak attack, and that's a lot of damage. But they may notice a few strange things about this particular dagger. Namely, the point looks strangely blunt compared to most weapons, and notably, there's a peace sign carved into the blade. This is the Dagger of Pacifism, and unfortunately, it's sentient. This dagger wants nothing to do with violence, and will do everything in its power to not be used for stabbing. Whenever your player tries to make an attack with the blade, they'll have to succeed on a charisma save first. If they fail, the dagger will force itself back into its sheath, and they won't be able to attack on this turn. They could still do other things, like a good dodge or help action, but they'll have to wait until their next turn to try again. And if they do succeed, the dagger will let them know the entire time how much they hate it. If you have a rogue bard multi-class in the party, they'll love this one. Otherwise, they're getting trolled. Those are 14 ideas for magic items you can throw into your own games. While some of these are definitely more ridiculous than others, I hope it showcases that sometimes the items your players will most fondly remember are the ones that got a little out there. I'd love to hear how you'd modify them or any of the out-of-the-ordinary magic items you've given to your own players. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you'd leave a like and consider subscribing to the Bard's College. I make videos all about D&D, DMing, and content you can use at your own table. So if you like what you saw, stick around. But for now, good luck, and remember, crit your players.